Keith Hernandez is a guy that, believe it or not, is not just a raconteur and a baseball guy. He follows football pretty big, Chris's.
Yeah.
He really does.
Who's his team? He's a
well, he grew up
in
the Bay Area, so Niner guy growing up. And Dan Fouts' dad, Bob Fouts, was the radio voice of the 49ers back then.
Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
see how life kind of comes full circle. Now, Keith is in the broadcasting business himself, but a big college football fan. And I wonder if he's got a take on the combine, if he'll be one of those nerds like the rest of us going to be sitting there watching it.
I wonder what Keith would have ran a 40 in back in his day.
Pre-hip replacement or?
Pre.
Yeah. I bet you could have gone under 5. Yeah. Oh, is he on the line? I guess he can answer that for himself. Hello, darling.
Hey,
how are you?
You guys are talking out of behind my back.
Oh, yes, kind of, a little bit. Hey, thanks for joining us, buddy. What was your best 40 time? I'm intrigued.
My best 40-yard dash?
Yeah.
I ran a 4.8 one time.
Okay, that
was in high school. I was happy about that.
Well, but Rich would be ecstatic when he runs his 40. If he gets under a 6, that's kind of
I think 4.4 is out of the question.
Well, these days, yes. I mean, none of us are as young as we used to be. Your football allegiance, college-wise and professionally, who do you go to?
Well, I grew up in the Bay Area, as you guys mentioned, and I was always a Stanford fan. And on the West Coast, remember when I grew up, there wasn't. You had only the couple. There weren't the regional game of the weeks like they were. So we always had USC, UCLA on TV because Stanford, until Plunkett, wasn't very good. But I was always a Stanford fan because they were in Palo Alto. And believe it or not, I was when I was younger, my age will kind of shine through here. I was a 49er fan until they traded Y.A. Tittle to the Giants.
Those rat bastards, why'd they do that?
They traded Y.A., and I was just devastated. So then when the Raiders came in, when the AFL, I was a Raider fan forever. But that's just a hard team to root for now for various reasons.
Amen, brother.
So, but I was a huge Raider fan growing up and back in the days when Blanda was quarterback.
Wow. So let me add, Keith Hernandez joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. And I don't fathom you're going to be watching every moment of the Combine, but there's a lot of intrigue about a Pac-12 quarterback in Mariota and Jameis Winston and, maybe some of the other kind of lesser guys down the list, whether it's Hundley out of UCLA or Bryce Petty out of Baylor. I know you watch quarterbacks, you're a fan of quarterbacks. So do you have a thought on whether Winston is actually a guy who can do something, or is Mariota going to be better? What do you think?
Well, I didn't see enough of them this year, and I'm not going to watch any of the Combine, to be honest with you. I am not the least bit interested.
Good.
I mean, that's for the professionals that need to make their evaluation. But what I saw from both quarterbacks, I wasn't overly impressed with Mariota with Oregon. I mean, he's a nice quarterback. I think Winston would have been better served maybe going into the year at Florida State, to be honest with you. That's my feeling. But, I didn't see them play all year, and, it's tough for me to make an assessment. They both obviously had phenomenal seasons.
Well, let's get you into your realm then. There's a bunch of baseball topics I'd love to get to you. And pace of play is something you and I kind of joke about in New York because it just seems it's not the 11-8 really exciting game that takes 3.5 hours. It's the really boring 3-1 game that takes 3.5 hours that they got to do something about. So maybe let's start with that issue. They have said out of the new commissioner's office that they're sensitive to it. They want to try to tweak some things. Is there a way to make baseball an under 3 hour, even under 2:40 game again without having to put a countdown clock in center field?
Oh, well, we know that, from the studies, that everybody seems to want to make the culprit the commercials. And the commercial time is not that much more than it was back in the days when we played a 3-1 game, and it was maybe a 2.5 hour, 2 hour and 20-minute game. I'm of the feeling that with all the baloney around the stadiums today, like a county fair, I don't think ownership has any inkling at all or desire to change the length of the games. I think they're very happy with it because they can sell more concessions, sell more or penny arcade games, and make more money. And that's my feeling. And so I don't think we're going to see a change. about this. I'm more concerned when we read in the paper whether they want to change the strike zone.
Yeah.
Again.
Well, let me ask you.
Again.
Let me ask you about that because this past year, strikeouts were way up, walks were way down to historical levels. How much tweaking is really necessary here?
I don't think there's any tweaking at all. Just keep it as it is. This game's perfect. I mean, it's geometrically perfect. Just go by the rule book. Call the knees, call the letters, call the corners. Come on, you can't just tailor make because of what hitting's down now, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that steroids, I think, did more damage than on the surface. It's just awful what it did to the game. All these guys getting so strong, the upper body strength, no more longer using their legs like the beautiful swings of a Tony Gwynn that are so fluid. Willie McCovey, I'm dating myself, Stan Musial, Ted Williams, more upper body, stiff swingers because they're so darn strong. Well, they've all become low ball hitters because a lot of them are muscle bound up top, and they want to take away elevate the knees. What are they talking about? Who are these people?
Who are these people? We're going to get to Seinfeld momentarily, but Keith Hernandez joins us on the Rich Eisen show. And I'm curious, just before we leave this topic completely, Keith, since you brought up the umpires, there were some tweaks last year in that replay is now a thing. It's not going away. How do you think baseball did with replay in year one of a full-on replay system, and where would you like to see it go from here?
I thought it got better as the season progressed. Josh, you and I work together. You're on the radio side of the Mets, and I'm on the TV side. We're with each other all summer, and just about practically every day. You do more games than me, but I thought it improved. But I do think it's kind of ridiculous that a manager can go out there, waste time, and not even address the umpire, just walk out to him because he has to be out there at a certain time period to make the challenge, turn his back to the umpire, face his dugout, and wait for a phone call, whether it's up or down. There's no penalty if you're wrong.
Right. There's got to be a better way to build that mousetrap.
I mean,
yeah.
It's like football. You throw it out. I mean, they have time to go up there and look it over too, but either you do or you don't. And I know there are penalties, but I just think it's ridiculous. But you know what? It's a complex issue now because we found out there was a lot of plays that were tricky, that the call early affected the play later in the game. It was a multi-faceted play that was started with the challenge, and it affected the other part of the play. Happened a few times. I do think they're getting the kinks out. We're going to have it, so they're going to have to get it as fast as possible and get it done because it just wastes a whole lot of time.
You got a couple more minutes with Keith Hernandez on the Rich Eisen show. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you your hot sports opinion about one Mr. Alex Emmanuel Rodriguez, now that he's on not quite an apology tour, but on a handwriting tour. Does the guy have any chance of getting through an entire season here, or where do you think that's all going?
Well, he's going to get by no matter what because he's going to get paid a heck of a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, he's not going to quit. If he gets hurt, they got to pay him. I happen to like Alex personally. We all have our drawbacks and our positive sides of our aspects of our character, and we have our dark side. He's here. He's back. He's paid his penalty. I mean, he's lost a lot of money, but I just don't think he gets in the Hall of Fame. And if he breaks any records, home runs rise, it's all dirty. To me, it doesn't count. So I've been on the air, and you've heard me. I'm strongly feel that if someone is caught doing steroids, which is cheating, they don't get in the Hall of Fame.
And for those that don't know, by the way, Alex Rodriguez grew up watching the mid-'80s Mets. And Keith, I'm sure, obviously, you know this. You were one of his favorite players. This was way before Seinfeld popularity and even the '86 World Series. He really wanted to grow up to be Keith Hernandez someday. So I'm sure that colors some of it. But just in terms of how he, I guess, kind of emerges from all of this, is it a situation where the media and the fans are almost ready to just give him no quarter whatsoever, and it becomes unfair, almost the pendulum swinging too far the other way?
Well, you make your own bed, you got to sleep in it. So as a fan, he's going to get it. And, he's older now, and we all know that a lot of the players didn't age as they normally do. The wear and tear when you get older, they actually got better when they were in their late 30s. When you start to tear, you should be, deteriorating. So it's unfair. Him coming back now, he's going to be under close scrutiny. He's probably going to break down and physically.
Yeah.
And it'll be curious to see what happens. I think Alex likes to be the center of the universe. He likes to have the attention, so I think he's loving all this right now. He loves being on the back page.
It is, yeah. And Keith, it's my theory, by the way, that everything circles back to Seinfeld eventually. I mean, to me, this is the Play Now episode where, George has to keep getting paid as long as he shows up, even though they're trying to smoke him out of the hole. I bring that up because we had your buddy Stephen Heitner on earlier in the program, Kenny Banya, and we've got a poll question here today that I'd like to run by you, courtesy of Chris Brockman here, because we were trying to figure out who's the greatest recurring non-major character that appeared on the show. So, Chris, who do we have on the list?
So here's the list, Keith. We got David Puddy, obviously Elaine's boyfriend. Jackie Chiles, who was the lawyer for Kramer a couple of times. Jay Peterman, the catalog mogul. Kenny Banya, who was on earlier. And dentist Dr. Tim Watley, played by the great Bryan Cranston.
And I'm sorry you're not on this list, Keith, but you were only on, 3 shows?
2. I was on the one episode, which was an hour. Was used on Sleeps Week, and then I was in the final episode. So
okay, so you're not offended you didn't make the cut here?
Oh no, that being on that show right there had such legs. It was unbelievable. That was such a great experience.
Residual checks notwithstanding, yeah.
Well, even beyond that, it was such a great experience. It's such a good time.
Keith, Chris Law, when they come to you with that script of the Magic Loogie, kind of reenacting the Zapruder film of the JFK, do you read that and are you like, because Seinfeld was only in season 3 at the time, it wasn't at its peak of popularity. Do you read that with any intrepidation, or do you just go for it and you're happy to be doing it?
Well, the interesting part, I read the script, yes, of course. I didn't read the script and say, okay, I approve, I'll do it. I mean, I took the job. I said I'd do it, and they sent me the script, and I didn't think it. The interesting side story to this is that Larry David, and when I came to L.A., they said they were going to use Darryl Strawberry as the second Spitter, and that was when L.A. had the riots, and I believe, and I could have my facts wrong. I think Darryl said, let it burn. Remember that horrible statement that he made
in '92,
about his hometown? And I said, I don't think, I went to Larry and Jerry, and I said, I don't think Darryl would be the right time for him to be, doing a loogie on a fan. And so I recommended Roger McDowell. I said, you're going to have to go get him. I go, he's a character. He'll be perfect. But he's in Mississippi. He was married then. Roger was a young guy. He was in Jackson, Mississippi. And they said, no problem. They flew him in.
Wow. So it could have been much different. It could have played out a little differently, second Spitter-wise. So,
yes.
And I'm just curious before we let you go, Keith, being around you just a little bit, I have never gone through a whole day where somebody, some random fan, some usher, hasn't thrown one of the lines back at you. Is there a day that goes by, just like how Dave Roberts stole the base for the Red Sox, and there hasn't been a single day in his life where some Red Sox fan doesn't say, hey, thanks for stealing the base. Do you actually have a full 24-hour period where somebody doesn't reference Seinfeld?
Well, what's happened now, Josh, as you well know, we've been working together now, 3 years? It'll be our 4th year?
Yeah.
You know that I shaved my mustache.
I am aware. Yes.
So I'm not as recognizable, but up to that point when I shaved my mustache up, and you did Seinfeld, it's on a national level, not where you stole the base for Boston or got a base hit in St. Louis with the 9th inning of the 7th game of the World Series, where it's more local and regional. Seinfeld reached the entire nation, so up to that point, yes, I've had people in airports come behind me and say, can I help you move? Or what was it like kissing Elaine? You know, that happens all the time. So you'd be surprised. It still happens today. The people come up and they recognize me without the mustache. Invariably, it's not the conversation does not go towards baseball. It always goes right towards Seinfeld.
And point of order, is the mustache gone for good? Is there a reunion tour planned, or where are we with this?
No, it's gone for good. I always say in the air, I look like, for all those folks that are old enough, all the young audience out there won't remember this, but Hollywood Squares had one of the guests up there, and was Charlie Weaver, and he had kind of this gray, totally gray mustache, and not so much gray hair on top. I have hardly any gray hair on top. I still got a lot of my black hair, but my mustache is absolutely 100% gray, and it just, I just didn't like it, so it's gone for good.
All right, may it rest in peace. Keith, thank you so much, buddy. We'll see you in spring training in about a week and a half. And
okay, I'll be there.
All right, I'm sure you will. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Okay.
All right, that's a great. He's Keith Hernandez.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.